uzito, kichwa changu kina barua za jana. Nilikuona, nikacheka kidogo, lakini ndani kuna mvua. Uliposema it's okay, nilisheka barani, macho yako yalinikosea. Sikujua cha kusema, na kila nikikimbia, rudi karibu zaidi. Nataka kuamini, lakini inalia. Sielewi roho yangu tena. Sielewi roho yangu tena. Baby, why you do me like that, girl? Sielewi roho yangu tena. Nikaita, nikasita, nikaangalia majina yote nilitaka kusema I'm fine, lakini sauti ikanigoma. Kijani cha macho yako kimebaki moyoni mwangu, nikipumua kwa nguvu nasikia nimeshika hewa, na kila nikikimbia, rudi karibu zaidi. Nataka kuamini, lakini roho inalia. Sielewi roho yangu tena. Sielewi roho yangu tena. Baby, why you do me like that? Sielewi roho yangu tena. Niseme ukweli sasa, sijui kama ni wewe au ni mimi. Nimechoka, kila njia inauma. Nipe muda kidogo, nipe nafasi ya kuota. If I stay, I might break. If I go, I still feel you. Sielewi roho yangu tena. Sielewi roho yangu tena. Baby, why you do me like that? Sielewi roho yangu tena.
Yes, peace and love, wonderful BlackHotFire family. Welcome to the Swahili classes for the weekend. I do hope that you're doing fantastic, and this is yet another opportunity for you to learn a thing or two about the beautiful language of Swahili. As always, you can connect with us on our different social media platforms. We are on our Facebook, BlackHotFire, as well as on Twitter, BlackHotFire, as well as on Rumble, and also on the official network website, which is www.blackhotfirenetwork.com. Once you are on there, please create a profile, and when you create a profile, you will be able to connect to the like-minded individuals on the platform. On the BlackHotFire network, we say that iron sharpens iron, and therefore, if you're looking forward to connect with people who are about African unity and of course are inspiring collective African consciousness, then this is a rightful platform for you. I've just played as a song, and that particular jam is known as Sielewi. The name Sielewi, or the phrase Sielewi, it simply means I do not understand. So if anyone was to speak to you in Swahili and you do not understand, then you would tell them Sielewi. Sielewi simply means I do not understand. It is a phrase, and this phrase has two components. The one component is the syllable C, and the syllable C is used to negate a verb in Swahili. For example, you would say sitaki. Sitaki would simply be I don't want. If you say sitaongea, it would mean I will not speak. If you do say sitakula, it means I will not eat. So the syllable C, SI, is used as a prefix before the root verb to show that you are negating this particular verb. For example, if you do say siski, siski means I am not hearing you, I cannot hear you, or I'm not hearing you. And therefore, that particular word, that particular phrase, sielewi, it simply means I do not understand. It has components, the components, and then elewi, from the word elewa. Elewa is a root verb there, and therefore elewa means to understand. So if you do say sielewi, it simply means I do not understand. And the lady on that particular song, she says that she cannot understand her heart anymore. And when it comes to the affairs of the heart, I would say, things are particularly difficult. Sometimes you think what you intend to feel is what you feel, but then again, things do not work and the heart does what it does. Nonetheless, welcome to class. And on this particular platform, you can engage with us, you can ask questions, and you can also respond. And I want to say that today we shall be focusing on pronouns. In previous episodes, we have covered nouns, and we did say that nouns are referred to as majina or nominal. But for pronouns they are referred to as viwakilishi, since they represent the noun. So a pronoun is referred to as kiwakilishi if it's one, but if it's many pronouns, you would say viwakilishi, because they represent nouns. And to help us understand that, I will just share with us a screen here, so that you can see the pronouns that we are talking about. And in Swahili, we shall be learning the Swahili pronouns, are displayed below, because they are very, very vital to our understanding of the language. And these pronouns, they include personal pronouns, which refers to the person speaking, or the person being spoken to, or the persons or things being spoken about. We shall be talking about indefinite pronouns and also relative pronouns. And the relative pronouns, they connect parts of a sentence. And reciprocal or reflexive pronouns are in which the object of a verb is being acted by the verb subject. That is exactly how you get to look at that. And it's not difficult if you're trying to understand these particular pronouns. So you talk about the first person singular, and the first person singular you refer to as I. If you're talking about I myself, for example, I am known as Pikes, I am known as Pikes, then the first person singular I, it's reflected by the word mimi, M-I-M-I. So you would say the first person singular, mimi ninaitwa Spikes. Mimi ninaitwa Spikes. So the first person singular, which is I, you would say mimi in Swahili. Mimi ninatoka mbali. If you're talking about I am coming from far, you would say mimi ninatoka mbali. If you're talking about I am going to school, you would say mimi ninaenda shule, or you might say ninaenda shule, because the I in Swahili, it is reflected as mimi. For example, if someone says mimi sipendi chakula mingi, they would simply mean I don't like eating a lot of food. I do not like eating a lot of food. So the first person singular, in this case, we would say mimi, M-I-M-I. And there is something that you also have to note in that. You would have to say that there is a very, very important syllable that reflects also the first person singular. And this syllable is ni, N-I. For example, you might say ninaenda shule. You can replace mimi ninaenda shule and just say ninaenda shule, because the ni is also used in place of the first person singular. And you might say ninaitwa Spikes, or you might say ninaenda shule. You might say ninakula chakula, which means I am eating food. The first person singular also becomes ni. And when we go to the plural, the first person singular, then that would be sisi, S-I. For example, you might say sisi tunakunywa maji. That means we are drinking water. We are drinking water. So the first person plural is sisi. So the plural form of mimi is sisi, because mimi is singular, it means I. But if you're talking about we're talking about we, then you would say sisi. And in that particular context as well, you might also realize that there is a very, very important syllable, which is a syllable two. The syllable two can also be used in the place of that cc, the syllable two. So if you do have the syllable two, you would say tu nakunywa maji. So let me just put it down so that we are on the same page. I am talking about I, the first person singular, which is a pronoun. You would say I, that is equated to mimi. It is equated to mimi. So I might say I am going to school. Then it will be mimi ninaenda shule. But I am saying there is also the ni syllable. The ni syllable, it also points to self. It also points to I. It points to self once again, and therefore You can also say ni naenda shule. Ni naenda shule without using mimi. So you might say ni naenda shule. Ni naenda shule simply means I am going to school. Ni naenda shule means I am going to school. I am going to school. So that particular syllable ni, it represents I. It represents I, and it represents a pronoun mimi. It represents a pronoun mimi. But if you're talking about the plural of it, so it means we. It means we. We do say sisi. We that is equated to sisi. It is equated to sisi. For example, if you do say sisi hatupendi makelele, we do not like a lot of noise. We do not like a lot of noise. So that would be sisi. Sisi pointing to we. Hatupendi makelele, then that would be we do not like noise. We do not like noise, or we do not like loud noise, something like that. So in that context, you can be able to follow with us slowly, and you would be able to see that with the language, we do have the pronouns, and I have said the pronouns are known as viwakilishi. Viwakilishi because they represent the noun. In the previous classes, when we were learning about nouns, we did say that nouns are known as majina. And if it's one noun, you would say jina, J-I-N-A. For example, you might say jina langu ni Spikes, then that would be my name is Spikes. My name is Spikes. And if you're talking about sisi tunaenda nyumbani, then that would be we are going home. But anyway, that is the first person, the singular and the plural form of it. And I have said that if you're talking about the plural, sisi, we, then that can also be represented by the syllable tu. The syllable tu, which is tu, syllable tu, which is tu, and therefore you would say tunaenda nyumbani, then that would be we are going home. So the syllable tu is also to be understood, and you have to mark that together with the syllable ni. The syllable ni is for I. The syllable ni is for I, and the syllable tu is for we. The syllable tu is for we in that particular context. So the syllable ni is for I. You might say ninaitwa Spikes, and that would be I am known as Spikes. But if you said tu napenda chakula, if I did say tu, the syllable tu, then that would be we. Tu napenda chakula, then that would be we like food. We like food. I bet everyone loves to have some sumptuous meal and just eat good. But anyway, welcome to class. Once again, in Swahili, we do say karibu. And if you want to emphasize something, you would say sana, S-A-N-A. For example, if I did say karibu sana, karibu simply means welcome, and sana means a lot. I'm just emphasizing very welcome. So I would say karibu sana, K-A-R-I-B-U, that is for welcome. It's for welcome. Today we are learning about nouns, but I do, diverge every now and then, and I talk about other things. So karibu sana, that would be much welcome, because sana is for emphasis. Sana is simply for emphasis. It means very. Sana means very or a lot. It means very or a lot. Sana means very or a lot. Very or a lot. That is how you would say it. And let me know if in case you have a question, do not hesitate to ask. I would love to answer your question. Please do not hesitate to ask any kind of a question relating to a learning of the language. And the most basic way to learn the language is by using your your 5 fingers. And this, when you raise your palm, you can use your palm to show the 5 fingers. And these 5 fingers, they represent the 5 vowels in Swahili. So we have 5 vowels in Swahili. The vowel A, which is the English letter A. The vowel E, which is the English letter E. The vowel O, which is the English letter O. The vowel E, let me just put it down. A, E, O, O. So this is A, this is E, this is E, this is O, and this is O. That is how you would represent them. using your five fingers, and you realize that in Swahili is a language made up of syllables, and these syllables have alternating vowel sounds. They are syllables with alternating vowel sounds. So that is the first person singular. The second person singular. The second person singular becomes CC. So that is how we get to represent in the second person and the first person. So you realize that the syllable two, like I was saying, the syllable two is simply used to refer to we. For example, tunaenda sokoni, then that would mean we are going to town. We are going to the market. If you did say tunakula chakula, it would mean we are eating food. If you did say tunaishi mbali, it means we live far off. If you did say tumetoka Nairobi, then that would mean we come from Nairobi. So anything you would put after the two, then that is just to show that it is we, and that is the first person plural. Nonetheless, we go back to these notes. Let me share with us once again so that you can see my screen. And I did say, please feel free at any point to ask a question. Feel free to ask a question at any particular point. So when we are talking about the second person, and this is the pronouns that we are talking about. We are learning pronouns today, and pronouns are known as viwakilishi in Swahili. And kuwakilisha means to represent. So the viwakilishi, the pronouns, they represent the nouns. So the pronouns, they represent the nouns because they are used in place of a noun. So for the second person, we do say wewe. For the second person singular, we do say wewe. For example, if you say wewe unaongea sana, then that would mean you speak too much or you speaking a lot. But if you're talking about the plural form of the second person, then we would say nyinyi, nyinyi, NYI. Nyinyi mmekula chakula kidogo, then that would be you have eaten a lot of food. So that would be wewe, or then that would be wewe. But you also have to realize that if you're talking about the five vowels that we have talked about, the five vowels that you have mentioned here, the vowel U is also used for you, all the second person. It is also used for you, all the second person. So in that regard, we can have an example. For example, unaenda shule. If I did say unaenda shule, then that would be you are going to school. If I did say unaimba wimbo, the vowel u unaimba, it also represents the second person. Unaimba vizuri. This unaimba vizuri means you are singing well. You are singing well. You are singing well. So that is how you represent. So that is how you would say it. You would say unaimba vizuri to mean you are singing well. So the vowel u, which is the English letter U, in Swahili the way you do say it is u. Unaimba vizuri, unakula chakula, unaenda kazini, unaitwa nani. For example, if someone, what is your name? Someone might ask, what is your name? What is your name? You can say unaitwa nani. That is how you would say it. Unaitwa nani. If you're asking someone their name, you might ask unaitwa nani, je unaitwa nani, je unaitwa nani. Or you might ask jina lako nani, which is what is your name. Jina lako nani, which is what is your name. So the vowel u can also be used in the pronoun in the place of the second person singular for you, the second person singular for you. So you might say unaenda kazini. Unaenda kazini means you're going to work. Unakula chakula, it means you are eating food. Unafanya kazi, it means that you're doing work. So up to that particular point, if you do have a question, please ask. If you do have a question, please ask up to that particular point. Kama uko na swali, tafadhali uliza. So these are the examples for indirect pronouns used in the section of negation for the same. For example, you might say ninaenda. Ninaenda, it means I am going. Ninaenda, for the first person, you would say ninaenda, it means I am going. But if you're talking about we are going, you would say tu naenda, tu naenda. For the second person, you might say u naenda, which means you are going. But if you are talking about now the plural form of it, you would say naenda. Naenda, it shows that you are many and you are going. For the third person, you would say the pronoun is yeye. The pronoun is yeye. For example, you might say yeye ni mtoto mzuri. Yeye ni mtoto mzuri. So you're talking about him or her. You're talking about him or her, and that is the third person. So I'm talking about the first person, who is I. The second person is you, and then the other person will be them. So in the plural, you would say wow. For example, you might say yeye anacheza mpira, and that would be he or she is playing football. But the thing is, when you're talking about pronouns in Swahili, especially for the third person singular or plural, and even for the third person singular or plural, you realize that it is not gender specific for the third person singular or plural. It is not gender specific. Therefore, if you talk about yeye ni mtoto mzuri, you wouldn't know if he's talking about a woman or a man. You wouldn't know unless you get more specific and say yeye ni mvulana mzuri or yeye ni msichana mzuri. Then it becomes a little bit difficult for you to be able to understand what is going on with the description of that. So for the third person, we say yeye. For the third person, it's yeye. For the third person, we say yeye. That is he or she, because in Swahili, that particular part is not gender specific. So you wouldn't know, for some reason, you wouldn't know whether they are talking about a man or a woman. For example, if I came up to you and I did say, nimepatana na yeye, that would mean I have met them. I've met him or her. You'd say, nimepatana na yeye. You wouldn't really know yeye. Does yeye stand for a man or does it stand for a woman? You wouldn't really know. But for some reason, that is just the way Swahili is. Another thing to take note of in the beautiful language of Swahili is that Swahili does not have cluster consonants. It does not have cluster consonants. We have talked about the 5 vowels, and apart from that, we have the consonants, but you realize that there are no cluster consonants. So those are very, very easy for you to be able to understand them because they represent the first person, the second person, and the third person. That is exactly how you get to describe them. For that first person, the second person, and also for the third person, that is how you get to describe them because they are personal pronouns, which is I, you, he, she, it, we, you, and they. And of course, you can also say me, you, him, her, it, us, you, and them. And these are the personal pronouns. These are the personal pronouns that we are talking about in that context. And it is very, very easy about these personal pronouns. Like I have explained them in that particular description. Those are the personal pronouns. We have talked about the first person. The first person is Mimi or I. Then you would say ni. You can also say ni. For example, ninaenda shule. That would be I am going to school. I or Mimi. Second, the first person plural, which is sisi. That is how you get to describe them. But when you move on from that, you get to possessive pronouns. And in Swahili, you have no feminine or masculine aspect. It is very, very important that you understand that you do not have the masculine or the feminine aspect, and they depend mainly on the pronouns and the noun class. The roots are for the first person, you would say angu or mine, angu or mine. For example, if you're talking about my pen, you would say kalamu yangu for my pen. So you're representing it's mine, so you would say kalamu yangu. If you're talking about the plural, you would say kalamu yetu. And for example, if you point into something direct and you want to claim ownership of it, then you would say yangu ni hii, or this is mine. You would say yangu ni hii, or this is mine, and it's not difficult. You can also say yetu ni hii, which points to this is ours. And this is in the class of the EZ. You remember we have talked about noun classes, and the noun classes we have said that you have the EZ class of noun. So for example, if you're talking about maybe an inanimate item, an inanimate object, then that would be changu ni hiki, or you might say chetu ni hiki, and this is in the key V class of noun. This is a key V class of noun. For the second person, you say the root is ako. The root is ako. For example, you might say kijiko chako. So you have the AKO, kijiko chako. That means your spoon. If you're talking about a book, you would say kitabu chako, and that represents your book. If you're talking about yours, then the plural of that, you would say kitabu chenu, or you might say kijiko chenu, because that is what you own. If you're talking about the third person, you would say the root is ake. For example, you might say kitabu chake, you might say kijiko chake, and you might say chake ni hiki, all chao ni hiki. If you're talking about the third person, So you note in Swahili the possessive pronouns are used without the nouns. They are used without the nouns. If you use them together with the nouns, they become adjectives. For example, yangu ni hii, this is mine. Yangu, this is a possessive pronoun there. And that is some of the examples that we are given in that context. So the pronouns, they are known as viwakilishi. I did say I, you would say mimi. If you say you would say wewe. If you say he, then that would mean yeye. If you say she, then that would mean yeye, because they do not reflect the masculine on the feminine aspect of it. So in Swahili, if you do say yeye, it does not yeye actually covers both the masculine and the feminine. That is exactly how it works. So those are the pronouns. Once again, let me share with you that particular table so that you can see the table itself. And when you do see the table, it is as below. The pronouns, for I, you do say mimi. For you, you would say wewe. For he, you would say yeye. And also for she, it does not change. Whether it's he or she, it remains yeye. When we're talking about we, as a group, we do say sisi. For example, you might say sisi tumeenda shule, which means we are going to school. For they, a group of them, this is for the third, this is for a group. When you do say they, you actually would say wow. That is how you would say for they. You would actually say wow. That is how you would say wow, wanaenda shule. That is how you would say it. Wow, wanaenda shule. So for the possessive pronouns, you would say my. It translates into yangu. For yours, you would say yako. For example, kalamu yako, which is your pen. If you're talking about a book, you would say kitabu chako. If you're talking about maybe a phone, you would say simu yako. If you're talking about maybe perhaps his or hers, you would say yake. For his or hers, then that meant to be yake. That would be actually yake for his and hers, and it's not difficult. And that is yake. It means it is his or hers. So, for example, if you're talking about his pen, you would say kalamu yake. If you're talking about her pen, you would also say kalamu yake. So, for the his or hers, and that would be yake. Talking about maybe funguo yake. If you're talking about his key, funguo yake. If you're talking about maybe a pen, you would say kalamu yake. If you're talking about a paper, you would say karatasi yake. And that is how you would give the examples of his or hers. That is exactly how you would give the example of that. And it's not any difficult. I did say if you're talking about mine, you would say yangu. So for the paper, you would say karatasi yangu. For the paper, you would say karatasi yangu. And if it belongs to someone else, then it becomes also yake. Yake means his or hers. It's not specific. It means simply his or hers. So once again, pronouns are known as viwakilishi. Pronouns, they are known as viwakilishi. And what you realize that wakilisha simply means represent. Wakilisha simply means represent. So these pronouns, they represent nouns. They represent nouns. They represent nouns, and the nouns in Swahili are known as majina or nomino. Majina or nomino. That is how they are. In our previous classes, we have learned about the noun classes. I wish you could go back to that, but we have already studied about the 9 noun classes in their singular form and also in their plural form. So therefore, they make a total of 18 because we have the singular form and the plural form. For example, the key V, this is for the second class of noun, and this constitutes mostly inanimate objects. For example, a book, a knife, things like that. You would say kalamu. You would say that something like a chair, which is kiti, Kiti. This is for a chair in the singular. And then when you talk about many of them, you would say viti. So kiti changu, viti vyangu, ki vi. If you're talking about maybe kifunguo, which is a key, then one key would be kifunguo. If you're talking about many keys, you would say vifunguo. Vifunguo for keys. Now this is for the keys, and this goes back to our learning of the key V class of noun. And the key V class of noun mostly constitutes non-living and inanimate objects, like I did say the keys, the knife, the chair, things like that. And most of them, they fall in this particular class called the key V class of noun. It is very important for you to understand the classes of nouns because they also get to affect the pronouns. So they also get to affect the pronouns because, for example, if I did say rafiki yangu, rafiki falls in a different class of noun than a thing like a chair. A chair falls in a different class of noun, the kivi. So the rafiki falls in the our class of noun. So therefore, you might say rafiki yangu, but when talking about a chair, you will not say kiti yangu, you'll actually say kiti changu. So in that regard, you also have to understand what class of noun does a word fall under, because that will also help you be able to understand much better the way also the word will form in terms of the pronouns, the sentence will form in connection with the pronoun and the noun. But apart from that, you also have to remember that we do have these others, the possessive nouns, pronouns, like I did say yours. Yours, we do say yako. So therefore, if it's your seat, I would say kiti chako. If it is your umbrella, I would say mwamvuli yako. If it is your phone, I would say simu yako. And those are some of the things that you have to take note of when you are talking about these particular pronouns. I will share with us this link so that anyone that would like to check them out and maybe perhaps be able to understand better can just visit this link, and it's available on mylanguages.org Swahili, and then the category is pronouns. So if you visit this particular link, mylanguages.org /Swahili, then underscore pronouns, and then PHP, you'll be able to find it. You can just copy it. I think you can be able to copy it from the comments, and you can be able to check it out as it is, to be able to understand much better in depth what we are talking about when we talk about these particular pronouns. The possessive ones, like I did say, ours becomes yetu, theirs becomes yao. So, for example, if it's their pen, you would say kalamu yao. If it is our pen, we would say kalamu yetu because it belongs to us. It is ours. Then we would say yetu. And in that regard, we are representing the nouns, and therefore it shows that we are possessing that particular noun. You would say kalamu yetu, which becomes our pen. If you do say, for example, benki yetu, it means our bank, our bank. And that would be benki yetu, and it's not difficult. It's actually very, very easy for anyone to remember that. And if you do have a question to that particular point, please ask. Kama uko na swali, tafadhali uliza. Kama uko na swali, tafadhali uliza. If you do have a question, please ask, because we will be able to get into that. I have talked about these are pronouns, the personal pronouns, and also we have talked about the possessive pronouns. I do believe to that particular point, maybe perhaps you do have a question, you can interject and you can ask whatever question you wanted to ask. Swahili is not difficult. I think it just takes a bit of exercise and just trying to practice. We do say practice makes perfect. And if you do practice, just take your time, maybe an hour or two in a day. And when you take an hour or two, go through your notes. In case you want a copy of the notes, please let me know so that I can actually be able to send the notes to you. I will be happy, more than glad to send the notes to you. Just write an email with the subject Swahili notes to BlackHotFire Africa, BlackHotFireAfrica@gmail.com, and I will be more than glad to respond to you. Swahili is not difficult. Clip that. Swahili is not difficult language to learn if you do commit your time. Then I do think within a period, maybe a couple of, maybe 2-3 years, you might actually, gotten way ahead of other people in terms of your understanding and your proficiency in this beautiful language of Swahili. It is spoken by over 150 million people. I do believe about even more than that. And if you go to a country like Tanzania, Swahili is the official language. It is also the national language. So therefore, if you're conducting business, even in official, in different offices, you will be able to do that using Swahili. It is also the language of commerce in most other parts of East Africa. If you go to Kenya, if you visit Kenya, if you go to Uganda, if you go to Burundi, if you go to Rwanda, you can be able to very, very well conduct your business through this beautiful language of Swahili. And I do believe in a few years to come, it is also going to be accepted and embraced all over the continent, even in Southern Africa. A country like South Africa, there was a memorandum signed between the government of South Africa and that of Kenya to have Swahili trainers train people the language in South Africa. And there was also an introduction by the former president of Tanzania, John Kapombe Magufuli, who had also tried to introduce the language to the Southern African Development Corporation, so that these countries can have the Swahili as the official language. I'm talking about Zambia, Mozambique, and that the countries on the southern part of the southern eastern part of the African continent. Then that would be that was the agenda. Even Somalia recently they did introduce Swahili into their curriculum. So therefore, even the Somalis, very, very soon, the Somalis will become very, very much good in Swahili. And when you, even to a Somalia, I'm not sure when you would. Personally, I've never been to Somalia, but I would hope that in the next couple of years, if I were to go to Somalia for whatever reason, perhaps business, or just to go and do production of maybe a documentary there or something, I will be able to communicate to the people very, very well in Somalia as well. So thank you so much for being with us on this particular platform. It's never we never take your company for granted. We always appreciate you and your time for joining us on this particular show. And we do hope that each and every other weekend you can join us on Saturdays and Sundays as we congregate and just learn Swahili together. If you do have a question, the best part of it is that you can ask a question. This is a live segment. It is not a recorded segment. So therefore, with that particular benefit, you can ask a question and the question can be responded to, very, very abrupt. So if you have a question, please make sure that you ask. I will be more than glad to respond to you if you do have a question. But as we continue, it is important to note that there is a communication style and value in every language, and we always know that a language is the gateway to a culture. So for the communication style and value, there is the form of indirect communication in Swahili, which is considered much more polite than being direct and specific, especially when you're talking to superiors or elders. You may find that people address problems differently. For example, instead of asking for help, then explaining specifically their reasons, someone might tell you a 5-minute story about a problem that they are having, and then only begin to hint at the assistance that you can give. And you also realize that in Swahili, humor plays a very, very big role in communicating. I also do believe in other languages and cultures, people, love, enjoy a good joke. And when two people of the same gender are talking, touching is acceptable. It's common for the touch of the hands or the shoulders. And when two people of the opposite gender talk, there is very little or no touching. The only appropriate touch is a handshake in the culture, or in the in the culture which is in the culture. And when talking to an elder, many people tend to look down, or not really just direct eye contact, but tend to just have a look down out of respect. So there are differences between English and Swahili, which we have to note, and we have to realize that Swahili has only 5 vowels in contrast to the 22 of English. And these vowels are R, A, E, O, O. And English has 24 consonants, while Swahili has 28. I do believe more than 28, because they are what you call the special class of consonants. I am yet to pin down the number of those special class of consonants, but I will in our next class. So Swahili speech alternates vowels with consonants, and they contain basically no consonant clusters. So the language of Swahili, it does not have consonant clusters. It is very, very important that you realize that the language of Swahili does not have consonant clusters. That is how it is. It does not have consonant clusters. So you also realize that another difference between these two languages is that when you're talking about the language of Swahili, you realize that the two languages have very different systems of word stress. This is in the diction, and when you're talking about the way the intonation and how words are actually stressed, when you pronounce in different words, Swahili and English, they have very different systems of word stress. The intonation patterns are also a little bit different. So in Swahili, the typical intonation pattern is a low fall, which is carried over into English, even when English uses a rise. Therefore, it's not always clear if the speaker is asking a question in English, but in Swahili, there is a way it is actually made. But you can use also the syllable J. And this syllable J, this cues or signals the start of a question. The syllable J, it cues or signals the start of a question. Anyhow, we want to do a recap of what we have touched on today. We have talked about pronouns. Pronouns are known as viwakilishi. They represent nouns. Nouns in Swahili are known as nomino or majina. But for pronouns, we have studied about two very important categories. We have the possessive and the personal pronouns. For the personal pronouns, we have said that I translates into mimi. Mimi. I translates into mimi. If you're talking about you, we would say well. We would say well. If you're talking about they, we would say wow. We would say wow. That is for they. And if you're talking about us, you would say sisi. You would say sisi. And you have learned about also two important syllables. That is the syllable two, and also the syllable syllable ni. The syllable ni points to I. The syllable ni points to self. It points to I. But if you're talking about the syllable two, it points to we. It points to we. And therefore, in that regard, it is very, very important for you to be able to remember those particular categories of pronouns. I have said we have the possessive pronouns and we have the personal pronouns. We have those two categories. For the personal pronouns, we have said that Mimi represents I, Sisi represents we. If you're talking about the second person is you or wewe. For you, we would say wewe. And if you're talking about now the plural form of it, you would say nyinyi. You would say nyinyi. If you're talking about the third person, it becomes yeye. And we have said for the third person, it is not gender specific. So therefore, it would be very, very difficult for you to know whether this individual is talking about a he or he is talking about a she. That is just the way the language is, but it's not any difficult. So for the pronouns, apologies, we had a bit of a break there. For the pronouns, I was just saying that you have the singular and the plural form of the pronouns. And I was just saying, for the pronouns, if you're talking about I, myself, mimi, the first person singular, we would say mimi, I, mimi. For example, if you would say mimi ninaenda shule, for example, if you want to say I am going to school, you would say mimi ninaenda shule, mimi ninaenda shule. If you're talking about the second person, you would say wewe, wewe. For example, you would say wewe unaenda shule, wewe unaenda shule. That is exactly how you would say it, and it is not even difficult. I would always say that the more you practice it, the more it becomes easy for you to understand. When you practice these particular pronouns, you'll be able to understand them much more easier. We would say that these particular pronouns, they are the personal pronouns, and we also do have the possessive pronouns. For the personal pronouns, I have said that if you're talking about yourself, the first person singular, you do say mimi. For example, mimi nitakunywa maji mingi, mimi nitakunywa maji mingi. That would be I will drink a lot of water. If you're talking about maybe coffee, you would say mimi nitakunywa kahawa kidogo, then that would be me or myself. I will take a little bit of coffee. Mimi nitakunywa kahawa kidogo. And I always also do remind us that you have the syllable ni, and this syllable ni, the syllable ni is actually also can also be used in place of I, all, me, and therefore you would actually say ni takunywa kahawa, nitakunywa kahawa mingi, which is a syllable ni. You would say ni, and then that would be, it would represent I. That would actually represent I, and therefore you would say it ni takunywa kahawa mingi, ni takunywa kahawa mingi, and it's not even difficult. You can also say we. If you're talking about we, you would say sisi, sisi. You would say sisi. For example, you might say sisi tutakunywa kahawa mingi. That means we shall take a lot of coffee. We shall take a lot of coffee. And it's not even difficult. If you do have a question, please ask. Kama uko na swali, unaweza uliza, and I will be more than glad to respond to you. If you do have a question, I will be more than happy to respond to you, because I'll be more than glad to respond to you, because if you do have a question, you can always ask, you can interject at any point, and I'm more than glad to respond to your question. I did say if you're talking about I, you would say mimi, you would say mimi, because this is the first person, you would say mimi. If you're talking about you, then we would say wewe. The second person, we would say wewe. We would say wewe. We would say, for example, wewe utakula chakula kidogo, then that would be you will eat a little bit of food. You will eat a little bit of food. That is exactly how you would say it. You would say you will eat a little bit of food, and it is not even difficult. I would say the more you practice it, the more it becomes easy for you to actually learn the language. And we have more than 1,500 languages on the continent. We do have 1,500 languages on the continent, and these languages, they come, with different communities. We have different languages. For example, in Ethiopia, we have 81. In Ethiopia, we have 81 different communities, and therefore in Ethiopia, we have 81 different languages. In Kenya, we have 47 different ethnic groups, or what you call the tribes, and therefore we do have 47 different languages. And if you talk about a place such as Cameroon, or you go to Nigeria, in Cameroon, they have about in Cameroon they have about 150, and therefore, if you're talking about learning languages, you'd have a whole lot of tasks learning languages in Cameroon. If we talk about places such as Nigeria, in Nigeria, they have about 200 different ethnic groups, and therefore these different ethnic groups, they have different languages, and therefore it becomes even much difficult learning all these languages in Nigeria. So, or maybe Nigeria, Cameroon, and Kenya. Then you'd have Nigeria having 200, Cameroon having 150, Kenya having 47. And you realize that if you talk about the 54 African countries on the continent, then you do have so many languages on the continent. And therefore, it will be very, very difficult for people to understand each other. Even personally for me, when I'm interacting with different people from different parts of the country, you will catch up with people conversing, but you do not know exactly what they're saying. But we have chosen Swahili because Swahili is actually easy language to learn. It is widely accepted. And therefore, even for anyone from the diaspora, if you're coming from maybe perhaps say Brazil, you're coming maybe perhaps say from the UK, and you're looking for an African language to learn, I would always advocate that you learn Swahili because it is one of the easiest languages that you can learn. And I always do say that in case you are looking for many for resources online, there are many resources online. For example, we do have the Duolingo app. You can get the Duolingo app, and it will help you so much in terms of your interpretation of a language to another. It becomes much more easy in terms of your interpretation of the language from one language to another. If you're talking about maybe perhaps other resources, we do have an archive of Swahili, Swahili classes. And these are Swahili classes. They are on our channel, on the BlackHotFire Network channel. And also you can find them on the BlackHotFire Africa channel, because these are classes from way back from 2022, from 2023. I think even in 2024, we did have classes. I can't remember quite well. But you just search for BlackHotFire, Swahili class on BlackHotFire, and you will be able to come across and these particular classes, and you can learn and engage with different classes that we have done right here on this particular platform. So once again, a recap, we have learned that pronouns, they are known as viwakilishi. Pronouns, they are known as viwakilishi because they represent nouns, or they are used in place of nouns. Nouns themselves, they are known as majina. And we have been learning about, this Swahili grammar. The nouns, we did say is majina or nomino. The pronouns, they are known as viwakilishi. We have learned about vitenzi. And I did say in our previous class that vitenzi, it comes from the word kitendo. It comes from the word vitendo. Vitendo, kitendo means an action, because verbs are action words, and therefore they are known as vitenzi, not vitendo, but vitenzi. Vitendo means actions, but the verbs, they are known as vitenzi. If you're talking about the adjectives, they are used to explain, and the word for explain in Swahili, it is eleza. The word for explain in Swahili is the word eleza, and therefore they are known as vielelezi. These are the words that are used to explain. These are the words that are used to explain. They are used to explain the nouns. And we have given examples. For example, when someone says, "How are you doing?" If you do say mzuri, mzuri comes from the word zuri. Mzuri comes from the word zuri, and zuri is such an adjective, and therefore you would say mzuri, but the root verb there is zuri, which is an adjective, and that happens to be kielelezi. But if there are many, you would say vielelezi, and that is simply how you get to describe that when you talk about the Swahili grammar. The nouns, nomino or majina. The verbs, vitenzi. The pronouns, viwakilishi. The pronouns, these are viwakilishi. When you're talking about the adjectives, you call them vielelezi, because we have given examples of the vowels E, O, U. And I did say, for example, in the word, these are the 5 vowels. These are the 5 vowels in Swahili. And in the word eleza, this has the vowel E, which is the English letter E. The English letter E is a Swahili vowel E. So you say V, you say eleza. Eleza means to explain. Eleza, it 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 means to explain. So if you're explaining something, then, or you have a word explaining a noun, which is the adjective, therefore, from this word eleza, we get vielezi. So you would say vielezi, that is vielezi. These are adjectives because they explain the noun. Adjectives. because they explain the noun. For example, if you're talking about a good child, if you're talking about a good child, if you're talking about a good child, you would say mtoto mzuri, mtoto mzuri. So mzuri is a adjective. It shows good. Mzuri is adjective. It shows good. And you also happen to realize that from what we have learned a little bit earlier on, today we were focusing on pronouns. We have said that when you look at this, the third person, let me share this particular notes once again, the third person. Let me share these notes again, the third person. For the third person, we have said the third person, we do say it's yeye. You would say, for example, yeye anapenda kuongea sana. Yeye anapenda kuongea sana. That would be he or she loves to talk a lot. He or she, ongea means to talk. It's in an example of a Swahili word with the vowel O, which is the English letter O. So if you say anapenda kuongea, yeye anapenda kuongea sana, yeye anapenda kuongea sana, then that would be he or she loves to speak a lot. But if you're talking about they love to speak a lot, you would say wow, wanapenda kuongea sana. You can say wow, or if you're pointing to them over there, then you would say wale wanapenda kuongea sana. Wale wanapenda kuongea sana. And it's not even difficult. I always do say that when you do have resources, these days there are vast resources that you can use on the internet. For example, you can go and find, like I did say, the archives of our previous classes. You can find them, and apart from that, you can also find. The apps. You know, there are many apps being made. And I also do believe that if it hasn't already happened, that AI will also play a very, very big role in terms of learning of languages and making it, even much easier. I do believe AI will be able to do that. And I'm talking about things like with the subtitles. These days, every other clip that you're watching, there are tools that make, the subtitles pop at the bottom there. So, for example, if you're listening to a Swahili song, then there are subtitles in English. Or if you're listening to, if you're watching a Swahili movie, then there are subtitles in English. And therefore, you can now be able to, connect two and two and be able to learn this language a little bit much easier with AI, with other resources that are available in this day and age. If you do have a question, please ask. Tafadhali uliza. We do have the common courtesy words in Swahili. We do say asante for thanks. We do say tafadhali for please. We do say pole. We do say pole for sorry. We do say tahadhari for beware. We do say kwaheri for goodbye. We do say karibu for welcome. I think I had already explained about karibu at the start of this particular class. We do say karibu at the start of this particular class when we are welcoming you. And if someone says karibu sana, it simply means it's an emphasis on the word karibu, because karibu simply means welcome. Karibu simply means welcome. So as we proceed, we can take a few examples, or we can check on a few examples. And these are the examples of the pronouns that I have shared a little bit earlier. And these pronouns, for example, I was saying that for the third person, yeye, it's not gender specific. So really in that particular regard, it's not gender specific. So I was saying yeye anapenda kusoma. If you do say yeye anapenda kusoma, it means he or she loves to read. Yeye anapenda kusoma. But that is for the third person. For the first person is I, we do say mimi. For the second person is you, we do say wewe. We do say wewe. And if you're talking about them, we do say wow or wale. If they are just next to us, you might point to them and say wale. And it's not even difficult. Remember, if you're trying to, learn something and, maybe perhaps say the greetings, you do say habari yako. Whomever is responding in Swahili, they do say nzuri. Nzuri means good. They can also say salama. Salama means well. They can also say njema. Njema means well or okay as well. So therefore, if you're just trying to learn, and maybe perhaps even network with people, have a nice breaker, then you say umeshindaje or habari ya kushinda, which is how was your day, habari ya kushinda, and they would respond salama, or they might respond and say ngumu, ngumu. If someone says hali yako, hali vipi, you might say ngumu. Ngumu is difficult. If something is difficult and someone is just trying to explain that circumstances are not so good, someone is trying to explain that circumstances are not so good, then it means that they're saying that the situation is difficult. They would say ngumu. They would say ngumu. They would say ngumu. They would say ngumu for difficult. They would say ngumu for difficult. The opposite of that, of course, becomes rahisi. The opposite of that becomes rahisi. Rahisi. The opposite of that becomes rahisi. It becomes easy. But if someone says hali ya kushinda, or habari ya kushinda, if you do say ngumu, then it means that the day was pretty difficult. And if someone says habari yako, and they're asking how are you, and you are not good, you can always say the negative. You can say mbaya. So mbaya is the opposite of nzuri, it means bad. If someone asks habari yako and someone responds bad, it means that they're saying it's not any good. So that is the opposite of nzuri, and nzuri simply means good. Nzuri simply means good once again, but you are always free to express yourself and say that something is not good. You might express yourself and say that something is not good for that matter. Something is not good for that particular matter. So if anyone has a question, if you do have a question, please ask. Kama uko na swali, tafadhali uliza, please ask. Also, you can let me know where you're tuning in from. I would love to know. I would love to know if you're introducing yourself and saying where you're coming from. You might say, naming, nimetoka Nairobi, which is I am from Nairobi. Or you might say, nimetoka Tanzania, which is I am from Tanzania. You might say, nimetoka Senegal, it may be meaning you're from Senegal. Wherever you may be tuning in from, let me know so that I can also give you a quick shout out. But nonetheless, if you do have a question, please ask. Anything that has to do with pronouns. Our class for today was focusing on pronouns, and if you do have a question, whether it be the personal pronouns or whether it be the possessive pronouns, and I would love to respond to you in that regard. Like I did say, if we're talking about the pronouns, it is also important to understand which noun they are representing, because pronouns represent nouns. So it is important to understand which nouns these pronouns are representing, because we did say that we have different noun classes, and the noun classes, they influence how a sentence is structured. They will influence how a sentence is structured. For example, we do have the awa class of noun, or the wa class of noun, and this class of noun, it mostly constitutes people. It mostly constitutes people. For example, you're talking about a sister or a brother. When you're talking about a sister or a brother, and now you're talking about the possessive pronouns, you might say, if you're talking about your mom, your mother, that would be mama yangu. That would be mama yangu, mama yangu, mama yangu, mama yangu. That is my mother. When you're talking about mama yangu, it's difficult from when you're talking about something that is inanimate. For example, a chair. You will not say kiti yangu, you would say kiti changu, kiti changu. So K-I-T-I, then changu, kiti changu, you would say kiti changu. You would say kiti changu. That is simply how you would say it, kiti changu. Then that would be my seat, my seat, kiti changu. That is my seat. That is exactly how you would say it, kiti changu or my seat. But if you're talking about like a relationship, a possession to something different, it also, for example, if you're talking about the teeth, it falls in the teeth falls in the G, the G ma. Sorry, for example, if you give an example of the eye, you're talking about the G ma class of noun. One eye, we refer to that as jicho. If you're talking about two eyes, you refer to that as a macho. So therefore, if you're talking about jicho, you would say jicho langu, jicho langu. So you find that there is a change with that. Jicho langu, jicho, jicho langu, jicho langu. That is my eye. That is my eye. It's different. If you say my eye, jicho langu, it's different than when you're referring to like a person. You would say mama yangu or rafiki yangu. So you do find that there is that Y, A, N, G, U, mama yangu. If you're talking about something like, if you're talking about something like, if you're talking about something like a pen, you would say kalamu. You might say kalamu yangu, kalamu yangu, kalamu yangu, or simu yangu for your phone. Simu yangu for your phone. But yes, we do have those examples, like I was saying. We do have these examples, like I was saying, of the pronouns, and you can refer to this particular box. I've shared with us also the link table, not the box, but we can refer to this particular table. For the pronouns, I translates into mimi, you translates into wewe, he or she translates into yeye, and we do have CC translating into we. CC translates into we, and they translate into wow. They translate into wow, and it's not difficult to be able to comprehend or understand that. Once you do practice, then it means that you will be able to remember these particular pronouns very easily, and you can have as many examples, maybe perhaps also on that particular table as well. And you can engage with just your friends, your family, your colleagues, anyone. You can practice with them. And once you do, I think you can be able to get better, even with time, regarding your knowledge or your understanding of the pronouns in Swahili. Once again, they are referred to as viwakilishi. Viwakilishi, because they represent nouns, and the nouns they represent, we call these nouns jina. This is for one noun, but if there are many, you call them mazina. If there are many, you would call them mazina. If there are many, you would call them mazina, and that is simply how it is. How it is explained. How it is explained. You would say mazina. You would say mazina, and it's not difficult. You would say mazina, and it's not even difficult. You simply have to remember that with time. If you're talking about your names, you would say majina yangu or zina langu, because if it's your name, if it's one, you would say zina langu, and then you would say zina langu is, for example, Alex, or maybe you're talking about John, or maybe you're talking about Mary, or maybe you're talking about whatever your name is. You might say zina langu ni, zina langu ni, zina langu ni, and you realize that you might also say jina yangu, but jina langu is the very correct way you do say about your name. Your name. Say jina langu ni Alex, or jina langu ni Spite, or jina langu ni this and that. And once you do, it becomes quite easy for you to introduce yourself. And you can also be able to ask about a friend and ask them, where were they? Where were they? Simply is, how about you? That is how you get to ask. That is exactly how you get to ask. are not as many. Even as you wind up, the examples, they are there. In case you want a copy of those notes, I can just send you an email, and you can let me know. You can let me know about those particular notes. If you do have a question, you can ask. I will be more than glad to respond. And also, if you're talking about maybe perhaps having separate questions for maybe perhaps the nouns or the noun classes, I will be more than glad to also help out in terms of your understanding of the noun classes. We have 9 noun classes, and these 9 noun classes, they have their singular form and also their plural form, and therefore that makes them 18. That makes them 18. But for the sake of understanding, we have those ones that you particularly have to learn: the wa or the wa, the wa or the wa class of noun. And these constitutes of all the things that are living things. These are living things. We talk about, for example, a farmer. You would say mkulima. That is the wa. If the mkulima is a singular, and you're talking about a farmer. If you're talking about many farmers, you would say wakulima. Wakulima, that is many farmers. If you're talking about maybe perhaps a student, you would say mwanafunzi. That is for the one student. When you're talking about many of them, then you would say wanafunzi. Wanafunzi. If you're talking about maybe perhaps a judge, you would say mwanasheria for one judge. If you're talking about many judges, you would say wanasheria. Wanasheria. If you're many judges, you would say wanasheria. If you're talking about maybe something like a cook, you would say mpishi. Mpishi, that is for one. Mpishi. If you're talking about many, you would say wapishi. So that falls in the wa class of noun or the wa class of noun, because you would say mpishi anapika for the singular. For the plural, you would say wapishi wanapika. Wapishi wanapika. That is simply how you would say it. And it's not difficult. I do believe that with time and the more you practice, the more you can be able to internalize that and make it easy for you to understand. So if you do have a question, please ask. If you do have a question, please ask. If you do have a question, please ask. Kama uko na swali, tafadhali uliza. If you do have a question, please ask. In Swahili, I always remind us that Swahili, we do say swali. Swali is equitable, that is a question. And an answer for a question, we do say zibu. Zibu, J-I-B-U. J-I-B-U. This is for the solution or for the answer. Solution or the answer. Solution or the answer. So if you're looking for an answer, someone saying ninatafuta jibu, ninatafuta jibu, or there are people who also say jawabu, jawabu for a solution. Who also say jawabu for a solution. But if you do have a question, please ask. If you do have a question, please ask. Kama uko na swali, tafadhali uliza. If you do have a question, kindly ask. It might be pertaining to how you say something or pertaining to how you ask something. For example, if you're asking, you needed to have some food, you would say ninataka chakula, which is I want some food. If you wanted to have some water, you would say ningependa maji kidogo, which is I would love to have a little bit of water. If you wanted to have like money, you would say nipe pesa. Nipe is give me. Someone says nipe pesa. Someone says nipe pesa tafadhali, then that is give me money, please. If someone is talking about nipe chakula tafadhali, then that would be give me some food, please. If someone is talking about nipe maji tafadhali, then that would be please give me some water. So that is some of the ways, the basic ways in which you are able to ask for something. And I always do say that if something has actually been granted or afforded to you, then you can actually tell those people or whomever has accorded you that particular thing. You might tell them asante, or you might tell them thanks. You might tell them shukran. Tell them asante, or you might also tell them shukran. And that is the simplest way in which you can be able to just show your gratitude. Or you might say ninashukuru for I am thankful. I am thankful. Or you might say nimeshukuru because I have appreciated. I have appreciated. So that is how you would say ninashukuru, which is I appreciate. Or you might say asante sana, ninashukuru,
which is thank you so much, I appreciate. Thank you so much, I appreciate. If anyone has a question, please ask. If not, I would urge you to check out Swahili movies, Swahili films with English subtitles, and that would also be better because it can help you catch a drift of what's going on. For example, if you're watching a movie, and Tanzania is known to be one of the countries on the continent that produces, so many movies, some of them with the same storylines. But nonetheless, I always do say that in case you're trying to learn some Swahili, you can also use these films. And these films, they do have subtitles. So if they're in Swahili, they have English subtitles. And that might also help you, catch a drift of what's going on with the movie, the plot, what's happening. And it becomes much, much easier for you to be able to learn as you proceed. We are almost running up, but if you do have a question, I'm more than glad to respond. Today we were learning about pronouns. They are known as viwakilishi. The first person singular I, it's mimi. And we also do have the third person, which is he or she. He or she becomes yeye for the third person. He or she becomes yeye for the third person. If you're talking about the second person, for the second person, we have the singular, which is wewe, and we also do have the plural for nyinyi. We have the singular and the plural. So we're talking about the first person, mimi. But if you're talking about the plural, we do say sisi, we. If you're talking about the second person, we do say wewe. If you're talking about you, and in the singular, we do say, in the plural, we do say nyinyi. So those are the three important things to remember. The first person is mimi. The first person, singular is mimi. First person singular is mimi. If you go to the second person is wewe. The second person, that is wewe. Second person is wewe. That is a singular. But for the plural, we do say nyinyi. And then we do have the third person, and the third person is yeye. The third person is yeye. Third person is yeye. And apart from that, then we do have that is in the singular, and then in the plural, it becomes wow. In the plural, it becomes wow. In the plural, it becomes wow. Wow, that is for third person plural. Third person plural. That is the way it becomes third person plural. So those are the pronouns. Very, very easy. They represent nouns, and you also have to understand the noun classes. We have learned about noun classes many times on this particular segment. And if you do have a question, I will be more than glad to respond, and I will be happy to do so. If anyone has a question, if anyone has a question, feel free to ask. So the music is quite interesting, and I had shared with us a song from at the intro of this particular class today. And we do have a song which is known as a CLW. CLW simply means I do not understand. If at all I'm teaching here, and I'm teaching us some Swahili, and you do not understand anything coming from my mouth, then you can say CLW. CLW simply means I do not understand. CLW. But if you do understand, you might say ni naelewa. Ni na is a present continuous tense marker. Ni na, then elewa. Ni naelewa means I understand. And then there is a positive and a negative. If you're trying to answer something, for example, if I ask, Je unanielewa? Je unanielewa? J-E, the syllable J, it signals the start of a question. If I do ask, Je unanielewa? Je unanielewa? It simply means, do you understand me? And then you might say sielewi. You might say sielewi, or might say ninaelewa. Or if I did ask je unanielewa, you can simply say ndio for the yes. Ndio means yes. Ndio, it means yes. And hapana, hapana means no. Hapana, hapana means no. Hapana means no. Hapana, that means no. If someone is asking, do you understand me? And then you shake your head like this. You can also use the head to shake signal. And if you shake your head like this, it simply means yes. If you nudge your head like this, yes. If you do like this is a no. If you're trying to communicate and you're not able to speak in words, if someone is asking you a question and you do like this, then you nudge your head like this, it's a no. If it's like this, then it's a yes. You know, some places like in the Indian context, I realize when you do like this, you are disagreeing. And when you do like this, I think you're agreeing. But in Swahili, when you do like this, or even in the Bantu context, if you're doing like this, it's still understood to be a yes. And it is not any difficult. I have shared with you the link in case you want to go through these particular pronouns once again on your own. Yes, you can. Ndio unaweza. Ndio unaweza. You can simply go through them once again. And once you do, you'll be able to understand it much better. You can be able to understand it much better. So up to that particular point, please, if you have a question, ask. Kama uko na swali, tafadhali uliza. Kama uko na swali, tafadhali uliza. If you have a question, please ask. If you have a question, does anyone have a question? If not, I think we might be concluding it at that particular point. I have shared with you the link to understand pronouns much better. But if you have a question, feel free to ask. If you have a question, please feel free to ask. Kama uko na swali, tafadhali uliza. Kama hakuna swali, I'll just end with this particular jam. It's once again known as a Sielewi. Let me know how you feel about the Swahili music, and also maybe perhaps Swahili film, if you get an opportunity to check them out. This is a Sielewi, even as we wind up.
Nimeamka moyo mzito, kichwa changu kina barua za jana. Nilikuona, nikacheka kidogo, lakini ndani kuna mvua. Uliposema it's okay, nilisheka barani, macho yako yalinikosea. Sikujua cha kusema, na kila nikikimbia, rudi karibu zaidi. Nataka kuamini, lakini roho inalia. Sielewi roho yangu tena. Sielewi roho yangu tena. Baby, why you do me like that, girl? Sielewi roho yangu tena. Simikaita, nikasita, nikaangalia majina yote nilitakusema I'm fine, lakini sauti kanigoma.
Yes, the best thing about this particular music is that it's also a mixture of Swahili and English. So if you do not understand the Swahili part, you will be able to maybe perhaps pick on what she's talking about in the English part. But my hope is that with these particular classes that we have done here, you will not just float when you hear about a song in Swahili, that you are able to play it, you're able to enjoy it, you're able to understand what is going on with that. That is simply the goal for us right here for these particular classes. So thank you so much. I want to wish you a happy and a productive rest of the day. In case you're joining us for the very first time, make sure to catch us also tomorrow and also next weekend. We do purpose to be able to be your go-to platform for learning things Swahili, and for being able to also understand the culture, because language is a gateway to the culture. So if you understand the language, then it will be much, much more easier to understand what is going on with the culture. You don't have to be an anthropologist to have an interest in the culture or the language. You just need to be, you know, a person who has a passion for the people. And through the language, you can get the gateway into the culture. And this is the Bantu culture of the people of Eastern and Southern Africa. Eastern and Southern Africa, that is mostly where the Swahili language is actually being spoken. But very, very soon, it's going to be proliferated into other parts of the beautiful African continent. So peace and love, amani na upendo, amani na upendo. I hope that you get to enjoy the rest of your day. You can check out the official network website. It's www.BlackHotFireNetwork.com. Once you are on the network, please make sure that you subscribe. Follow the subscribe. Sign up. I was looking for the word sign up. Please make sure that you sign up on the network. And once you do, you can turn on the notifications. Once you do, please turn on the notifications. And once you have the notifications on, you'll be able to find out when, you know, the shows are going on, and when things have been posted on the network, and a whole lot of other things to do with that particular platform on there. So much peace and love. Till next time, I want to wish you a happy and a productive rest of the day, and make sure that you keep it BlackHotFire. For now, peace and love.